Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the first episode of Brewsiers. I am joined with Justin Verburg from Windmill Brewing, co-owner, head brewer.
That's exactly right.
I had a little bit of like a rough start on that one for the Facebook Live, but I think it was because the Requiem for a Meme, the 11%er, was hitting me right away.
Yeah, we started with these were full before we shot the promo. So.
Yeah. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
First annual episode ever. I don't even know if that's real. Annual.
I would hope they're more than annual.
Yeah,
episodes, right?
We've been doing a lot of them, but this is the first time that we've had this.
Okay.
So I don't know how to even approach it at this point.
Just see where it goes. That's the windmill model, Screw it. Just see what happens,
Fingers crossed. We've got, so just for people to understand, we're in our new studio, new offices, and we've got a little bit of a packed house here. It's about 5 people. And we've got lights, we've got the whole thing, and this is the first time we're actually trying to do this legit. We've got the OBS software going strong. We've got the split screen, so hopefully it all works out. Thanks for being the guinea pig.
All right, no problem. There was no reference material beforehand. Usually I like to listen to a podcast or something before I'm on it, which has happened like twice. But, it's trying sounding like I'm a professional podcast guest or anything.
Two's better than none.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the last podcast we had came to our brewery and just plunked down in the back. And I had to turn off all the glycol chillers and stuff because, back of a brewery is pretty noisy and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So just to get it quiet enough to a level where we could actually hear ourselves talk. So that was pretty fun, too.
Cool. Well, again, thanks for coming on. And I think one of the things I really wanted to kind of go through with this podcast is just to kind of document the explosion of this area. I think that was really my motivations behind starting it because it's very rare to see the level of amount of breweries in one specific geographic area as we have.
It's crazy. And it's just the how many of them started in such a short amount of time, too, is clearly there was demand for it. I don't think we've lost any of them really at this point. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 casualties, but percentage-wise, that's not terrible.
No. And
so it's been really well.
You're here to promote the 3-year anniversary of Windmill, which is a lot of time in a small business.
Exactly.
So how did you get your start, for the most part? How did Windmill Brewing come together?
The Windmill Brewing story. it's been retold and honed over time. But I basically started as a home brewer, kind of like a lot of other brewers, I guess. And I would go to Floyd's during my graduate classes at Purdue Cal, now Purdue Northwest. I'm still getting used to that. But
same.
We would go just close Floyd's down after graduate classes once a week and just, drinking, OG Floyd's like Gumball Head and stuff like that and just talking what would it take to do this? So me and a couple other of my graduate school buddies would get together and read books on it, talk about it, started buying equipment, started homebrewing. Just started on my parents' stove with an Irish Red recipe.
So Irish Red was your first one?
It was a kit. It was liquid malt extract. One of our favorite beers from Floyd's at the time was Brian Boru, which is a beer they don't make anymore. I still have 2 unopened bottles of it, which are probably horrendous at this point, but just for posterity. So that was kind of what we were chasing. We were trying to go for this, aggressively hopped, nice honey sweetness on it, Irish red ale, because it was a seasonal for them. So we thought, all right, we want to make this year round, or at least have the ability to make it year round. And we made it. We put a bunch of honey in it. Honey ferments really hot and fast, and you basically just get a lot drier product without a ton of the sweetness that you would expect from honey. We dry hopped it with Amarillo and stuff, which is kind of Floyd's signature. And we were okay with it, but it wasn't great. It wasn't Brian Boru. So then we just started researching, all right, well, what more can we change? We're all computer science, computer technology majors, so we're trying to figure out, what are the variables in this equation? Start reading more, started getting into all grain brewing, took over a good chunk of my basement with equipment, and started brewing in my garage. And then over time, it sort of just became, well, what would it take to actually turn this into a business? It was still fun at that point. They always say, don't turn your hobby into a job or it stops becoming fun, but it's still fun. We learned a lot over those years. So homebrewer.
So how long did it take you to go from kit? How many brews did it take you to go from kit to all grain?
Like 2 or 3. I
really?
think
So
we
you
realized.
jumped in quick.
Yeah, we realized real quickly that we were doing. I think technically it was a partial mash was our first. So it was a lot of liquid malt extract, but then you were steeping some grains in it and trying to get some flavors up. But we knew right away, like, we wanted to have complete control over the mashing process with the temperatures, grains, all that stuff to get the mouthfeel and the color and stuff we were looking for. So yeah, that wasn't a long jump for us. We jumped right in. And yeah, that one too, we figured that out, I think, relatively quickly. And
was your all grain rig, was that just kind of thrown together, or was that something you put a little money into?
It was a typical homebrewing all grain rig. It was nothing fancy. You know, now homebrewers nowadays, I think, spend as much equipment as Windmill Brewing did on our first commercial sized brewing system. I see these guys coming in, they got, you know, temperature controlled stainless steel fermenters and rims, mash systems, and all this stuff. I mean, we basically had an igloo cooler we bought from Home Depot with a screen in the bottom, which, you know, it works great. I mean, just pretty much the same concept. But yeah, the homebrewing equipment recently has gone crazy. We didn't have any of that fancy stuff. I think the fanciest thing we had was a 20-gallon Blickman boil kettle,
really,
which we still have at Windmill and use to this day. If we're cooking up fruit or something like that for a beer, we still use that. So that's probably one of the original pieces of the system. And I have our original 5-gallon pot that we used on my parents' stove upstairs too. We'll use that sometimes, though. It's pretty battered and bruised at this point. It's kind of cheap, so it worked out.
So how many brews go into the all grain before you start to get the idea that this might be a fun business to be into?
Probably 15 or 20, not a ton.
That's really early. That's crazy.
We would bottle it. We started kegging really early because I was not happy with bottle conditioning, which is a lot of homebrewers will just, you know, you sort of priming sugar, bottle it, and pray.
Yeah.
But you have no control over. You can to some degree about how much sugar you put in, temperatures and stuff like that. But we really wanted to have very precise control over carbonation levels and stuff, so that we right away started kegging it, purging our kegs with CO2 before we would fill them, you know, to reduce oxidation, temperature, pressure charts, figuring out what carb level we wanted. So we sort of progressed, I think, through some homebrewer steps pretty quickly. And I would bottle it off the kegs and just hand it out to people. And, you know, what do you think of this? Try this. You know, give me critical feedback. Don't just tell me you like it because it's free beer, which is a problem, I think, sometimes with homebrew beer. When you're giving it out to people, and they're like, yeah, it tastes great, man. And you're like, no, does it really taste great? Are you just happy I gave you free beer? And most people said,
and you're staring at people as they're drinking the entire thing. Okay.
All right. No.
Yeah.
But people said, like, no, legitimately, this is really good. So we had some, like a black IPA and a double IPA. We entered a barley wine and crowned it a homebrewers competition once. I like to tell the story because it's kind of funny. But we entered a barley wine in it, and we won silver medal. And there were 3 entries in the category. So we weren't the best, and we weren't the worst. But it's always fun for a while walking around like, we got a silver medal in the Crown Homebrewer Invitational and stuff. You know, you don't have to always tell the part that there were 3 entries in that category. But
that's awesome.
That told us, you know, we were kind of on the right path. And the feedback from the judges was actually pretty good on that. So, yeah, at that point, I just got really busy with life and work and kids and stuff like that. I'm married with 4 kids at the time. So we kind of took a break from homebrewing for a while because I just didn't have a ton of time to do it. Moved from Lansing to Dyer. Would homebrew occasionally in my garage with some friends and stuff. And I would always see the building for sale when I would come home from the city. I'd be sitting on Route 30 in that terrible traffic coming over that bridge in Linwood there, which wasn't a bridge at the time. There were still train tracks there that you could really get hosed on sometimes. And I would just sit and look at the building. It had a big for rent sign hanging in the front. Thought that'd be kind of a cool building for a brewery. You know, it's right on Route 30. It's really close to my house. It's big. It's zoned as a sort of special use industrial area. So, you know, the hospital takes up a lot of parking on the street. But if we're going to be open at night, not a big deal. And call up the landlord and just kind of on a whim just to see what he wanted to rent it for. And, well, what do you want to use it for? And I told him, and he was really on board with us, helped us out a ton with, you know, zoning, and he let us pretty much do whatever we want to the building. He said,
awesome.
just don't break it, you know, and so we tore out wall. It was pretty much gutted when we got it, but the front was a showroom for a garage door company with like a drop ceiling and some old blue like carpet. So all that came out, drop ceiling came out.
And for people who don't know, your location is right across the street from it was St. Margaret's. Is it still St. Margaret's?
Yeah, St. Margaret's Hospital.
And it's 30 and Hart?
Hart, yeah, those are the main cross streets. Ours is Gettler. So it's that little street that if the light at 30 and Hart is red and you really want to go south on Hart Street quickly, you'll go down Gettler Street at about 50 miles an hour, and then you'll see there's a police station there, and you'll slam on your brakes, and then you'll turn. Because I see that happen probably 500 times a day. But yeah, that's Gettler Street is the street we're on. So there used to be a little florist shop next door. It's just an empty lot now.
Cool. So what was the first beer that you were home brewing that you're like, this one, I mean, I know you're talking about your silver medal one, but which one was it like, we can take this one and make it something?
At the time it was, we just called it Pale Dutch Boy, which was an APA, which is still a beer we make, though the beer we make now is nothing like the beer that was.
So it's evolved.
It's evolved. It was originally just a classic American Pale Ale. Simcoe, Mosaic, Motueka hops.
Motueka, you don't hear that one very often.
No, it's a New Zealand hop. It's really
Yeah.
fun. We've thrown that in a couple of our beers, but I really like that one. So we originally kind of devised it as just a clear American Pale Ale, and that's what we that was one of our beers we launched with, and it's sort of evolved as we've gotten more into the hazy style. We changed up the grain bill, still same hop combo, but we hop it a lot more aggressively and at different times. So it's sort of the hazy cousin of what its predecessor was. But that was the first one that I used to homebrew that people really liked. And then we did a Belgian wheat pale ale, which was, I think we kind of originally based the recipe off a gumball head clone, but then we fermented it with Belgian yeast, so that was really fun. And then we did a single, double, triple, which is another beer that people ask us for a lot. We haven't done in a while, which was we came up with the name before the beer, because I tried a Belgian triple, and then we just thought single, double, triple, haha, and so the idea behind that was a single hopped, double IPA style Belgian triple.
Nice.
So it's hopped like a double IPA. It's fermented with Belgian yeast. Its alcohol content is the same as a double IPA or a Belgian yeast. And then we want to do single hop on it, so we could sort of change the hops up over time and highlight, Simcoe hops or Centennial hops. And we did the Citra hop version of it one time.
How was that?
And that was probably one of the first beers that really put Windmill kind of on the map. That was the first one that people would come in and be like, so I hear you got this Citra Belgian double IPA. And that was probably one of the first beers that we packaged and people would actually get really excited about.
Wow.
And this was long before hazy IPAs, I think, were even really a thing.
Well, that Citra Burst was an awesome one.
Yeah.
That was my first one, the fad that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, and for a while, too, those hops were crazy expensive and hard to find because basically every other brewery, and I think this is kind of what helped sort of our success, is every other brewery was trying to make a zombie dust clone at that point. Mm-hmm. So cool, let's buy as much Citra hops as possible and make a Citra American Pale Ale. And it was we didn't want to do that because we'll just go up the road and buy zombie dust if they had it at the time. Now it's pretty easy to find, but we don't want to just replicate that. Let's put our own spin on it and try something a little different. So that was where we came up with the single, double, triple thing. I think people responded to it really well. They thought, oh, cool, this is something different. Not just another Citra Pale Ale.
Oh yeah. Well, let me ask you this: I know we were talking about the first one that puts you on the map, but from a processing side, how was the transition from all grain home brewing into now commercial grain brewing, and how does that work out for you?
So we bought One Trick Pony's old brewing system, which is a psycho brew system or style system in the industry, and it's essentially a really large home brewing setup. There's 65-gallon pots with a hot liquor tank, mash tun, boil kettles. So really just scaling the recipes, which is literally clicking a button in the computer software we use and saying I want 65 gallons instead of 20 gallons. That was pretty much it. And then we had 8-barrel fermenters that we could fill up, so we'd have to brew 4 times to fill those because 65 gallons is about 2 barrels.
Wow.
So those were long, awful days. Which we kind of look back on now and laugh. I can't believe we used to do that, and I can't believe we used to make beer on that system and not die. But the transition was really easy because it was almost the same setup as I had in my garage, just bigger. And with pumps and other fun things. And I had glycol jacketed fermenters and stuff, so we could control the temperatures a lot easier, keg it, carbonate it a lot easier, things like that. But the learning curve wasn't huge.
It's interesting you say that because one of the things about upgrading equipment is all about making it easier and faster.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that not have like that big of a learning curve, especially with that level of where you guys were in an experience, is really fascinating. So it kind of came easy.
Yeah, and I always tell people too, like, we have no idea what we're doing. We're just sort of learning as we go along. So we've since upgraded to a bigger 9-barrel electric-fired kettle, bigger mash tun and stuff. We started with a 2-head manual filling canning line with a manual seamer. You had to crank the can up into it, and it would seam it. And we just upgraded to a 3-head automated system that we bought from 18th Street. That's all pneumatic and valves, and you basically push cans in one side and it spits other ones out the other side. So learning the manual system was kind of fun, getting us into how do you package beers, how do you make sure the seams are right, how do you make sure it doesn't get oxidized in the process, learning how to fix that when it breaks. You open it up and there's just wires and solenoids and all that inside. Now this new system too is just sort of a bigger, faster version of that. So same concept, just bigger and faster, and it takes a 10-hour canning day down to about 2 hours.
Awesome.
So it's all really just about saving us time.
Oh, yeah.
And that's really what the brewing industry is you're constantly just, looking to that next big capital expenditure. Right? Like right now we're looking at, all right, we're going to need bigger fermenters soon. We're topping ours out at 9 barrels and just making a mess on the floor and just kind of dealing with it at this point. But we're looking at 15s or 20s, doing double batches now that we got this faster canning machine, and just constantly working towards that next big purchase. And I've heard from bigger breweries too, like that just never goes away. You're just constantly saving up money to spend on something to make more beer and
to make more money. Startup phase.
Yeah, and just doing it sort of, we're really kind of conservative on it. I like to try to find used or old equipment and sort of repurpose it. I think everything we've bought at this point almost is used that we've found from other breweries or Craigslist ads and stuff like that. Our boil kettle's an old dairy tank. Our mash tun's an old dairy tank that we just converted for our use, and saves a ton of money. New equipment is really expensive, and you have to wait a really long time to get it.
Oh, yeah.
I think we just bought 2 of the first new things we've had at Windmill. We got a new pump finally, and a new glycol chiller. Those are the 2 things I think we've bought new. Everything else has been secondhand.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Did you guys start canning, or did you guys start off as pretty much a tap room?
We started off tap room kegs, did a little bit of distribution with the kegs, but mostly just tried to focus on the tap room. Got the canning machine, started doing just tap room can sales. We wouldn't distribute anything because we were still primarily keg based, tap room based.
Sure.
And that's sort of shifted now, where we can pull a couple kegs for the tap room, everything else goes in cans, and then just goes far and wide. And now our cadence has sort of picked up to the point where we're able to keep that going. Because for a while it was, you only got the tap room, so you got to kind of stock that with kegs and let those go through, because it took us so long to brew 4 times to fill a fermenter. And that was at the time, it was, when we opened, it was pretty much just me in the back or some friends, if anybody would stop by and help out. But that was pretty hard. Now we got 5 employees, and we got packaging, cellaring, extra hand for brewing. So all that stuff, it just sort of builds itself over time.
Awesome. Does the Windmill name come as a nod to your Dutch legacy?
Yeah, so me and Scott Vandergreen, the other owner, are both Dutch, from Lansing, South Holland area.
Oh, yeah.
Went to Ileana and all that stuff. So that's sort of a nod to that. People ask that all the time. They're like, I assume it's because you're Dutch. And we're like, yeah, it is. You look back and you're like, it wasn't super inventive, but, it makes sense. And
it works.
People get it. And around here, everybody knows kind of the Dutch presence in the area, so it makes sense.
Oh, yeah, I married into the Dutch community, and it was eye-opening. It was different. A very loyal base, and it's very inclusive, which is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll welcome you in and stuff, and we're not super good at being, very friendly to outside. Like, if you married in, you're good. You're basically, you're Dutch by association there, but I think we could work a little bit on, being a little bit more open. It's kind of a tight-knit group sometimes.
Yeah, I told Amber jokingly when we were getting married that I might have to change my name to Van Miskowski, just to kind of keep it going.
Yeah, Van Mikowski smell or something like that. You've been right in there. Yep, they wouldn't have even questioned you.
No, I would have been right in there.
Yep.
Yeah. So, fast forwarding a little bit, and like we were starting to start this thing up, and there's definitely highlight moments for us that I would say that we could like kind of like the ones that I'll never forget. And where was some of those early ones for Windmill? Those moments where you kind of sat back and were like, dude, we're doing this.
I think like the first year anniversary party was really cool. A lot of people showed up for that, and that was sort of where we're like, all right, we got something here. Like people really like us and care about us and like our beer. And then you had the other big one for us was when we started the Memes and Dreams Milkshake series. All of a sudden it was like we had to learn to deal with crowds and people on Facebook that wanted our beer really badly but couldn't get it, and we're not very happy about that. And people are like, well, just go in the back and make more. And we're like, well, it's not that easy. Like it takes like a month, and it's just, so learning how to deal with that was sort of fun. All Memes Day, we did that last year in November, was super fun. That was just an idea some of the guys in the back came up with. People really want these beers, like let's kill ourselves and brew. And that was still when we had our old brewing system, so we brewed 6 batches of Memes beers, 4 turns at a time, and then we had to package them all, and then we had to make a variety 6-pack, so 1 can from each batch in a 6-pack, which there's no machine that does that, so it was literally pallets of cans sitting everywhere and people walking around, snap, 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 but all that work, after that day, we were like, all right, that was great. Like that was worth every bit of it. So that was pretty cool. People said that they actually liked All Memes Day better than our anniversary party. It was just more beer, more fun. Anniversary parties are always fun though too. Though last year we had Docs at our anniversary party.
Awesome.
That was when we realized that we'd really tapped out our space there. We opened the back up, we opened the tap room up, but we just don't have the parking or anything to sort of fit that many people in our small little building. So that was why we decided to move it off site this year.
Well, it creates little anarchy.
Yeah,
right. It really does, and so
yeah.
it's kind of helps sometimes.
Yeah,
with the marketing side of it.
And people get people get a little upset sometimes. So trying to balance that to get things in, get lines for them, try to get everybody through, treated well, that sort of stuff it's a learning curve. But people around here are really, really nice and pretty forgiving, I would say.
Oh yeah, how's the Dire Police been in those situations? Good.
They're awesome. They love our beer. They're really good friends with the Small Town Coffee who roasts in our building too. So they're always keeping an eye out on us, making sure we had one time where apparently somebody forgot to lock up at night, and because we're closed on Sundays as Dutch people, and I guess a customer came not knowing that we were closed on Sundays and just pulled the front door open. Somebody hadn't locked it at Saturday night and walked in and was like, well, hey, these guys are clearly closed. Like, what's going on? So she called the police and was like, this business is open. So Scott and I get out of church at night, and there's a voicemail from our police officer saying, I'm at your business. Nothing appears to be out of order. It was open. Somebody let us know. There's nobody in here but a friendly cat, and we're like, okay, cool. So yeah.
So Luther's there 24 hours a day.
Luther's there 24 hours a day on mouse patrol. He goes into summer mode. He's not super busy, but wintertime when it gets nice and cold outside, we got a big empty field next to us that's sort of untamed grass, and inside is warm and giant sacks of delicious grain sitting there. So the mice are like, giddy up, let's go in there, and then they get to meet Luther. So that was the original reason we got him. He was a rescue, and Scott's brother Steve knows a lady that runs a cat rescue place, and she was like, I have this cat. He's not super social, not very personable, but as like a working cat, he'll probably be really good. And we've found actually it's quite the opposite. He's very social and not so good as a working cat, but he does catch the occasional mouse.
Well, he was very photogenic when we were there. And
Yeah.
I feel like you guys have been using him as a marketing piece ever since.
Case in point.
The glasses, yeah.
Yeah, and just sneaking him on some product labels and stuff like that. I mean, he is a fixture of the tap room. I mean, people say they come to play with Luther and drink our beer. So, yeah, we have to plan for his demise at some point. I think he's going on 5 or 6 years old at this point. I mean, cats will live for a while, but
sure. Well, I think it's like the Georgia Bulldog. You just got to name the next one Luther too.
We've been thinking that like we should start putting feelers out there for cats that look like him, and maybe people won't notice.
You mentioned the memes. I want to kind of rewind a little bit back to that. How does that start? Because that seems to be crazy. I mean, the fanfare behind that style of beer for you guys really, I feel like, cemented your place and amongst like not as competitive as it is, but there's just a lot of options community-wise here from craft beering. Where does that start?
It started with Mike and I are both, Mark, our brewer, our other brewer, and me are giant fans of Tired Hands Omni Polo out in Philly area, and
we just had the Omni Polo at Twincade.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Those guys are nuts. I saw a joke story about them the other day. I think it was like Omni Polo puts actual barley, hops, water, and yeast in a beer, and everybody kind of laughs about that because those are the guys that are throwing like fried chicken in a beer and stuff, or burgers. And everybody's like, yep, sounds like something they do. So they're just known for crazy stuff like that. And neither of us had the Milkshake IPA that they made with Tired Hands. And kind of like the Brian Boru story back in my homebrewing days, like, well, what would it take to make something like this? So we just kind of put our heads together and came up with a recipe. And, what kind of fruit do we want to do? Well, we were kind of planning on using mosaic hops. And mosaic hops and mangoes actually have a similar oil in them. It's actually the same oil that gives mosaic hops their mango flavor.
Really?
That mangoes have. I'm spacing on the name of it right now, but it's literally the same oil. So we thought those two would complement each other really well. I belong to oh boy, I'm going to say it on here, 4chan internet board at some point that was like, like stock picking and stuff like that. And one of the things on there was like, one guy had a calendar of like different announcements of like when companies would announce earnings, and it was the so-and-so's calendar of memes and dreams. And it was just like, all right, because, the stocks are memes and people would, invest and stuff like that. So that was kind of where the name came from, was this 4chan internet investing calendar. And we threw it on there, and we had no idea that it was going to become like a series of beers. We threw it to our label artist who had done the artwork for like 2 by Citra and 40 Hulking Giants, and said we want it to look like a meme, use the impact font on it, and then we'll just, switch up the colors and stuff if we change things on it. And he came up with that, just kind of like a really, really versatile template for us. And that was sort of just the first beer we made, and just kind of threw it out there, and we were really happy with it. And we still to this day haven't had the Tired Hands Omni Polo Milkshake IPA. And people it just exploded. Like we weren't ready for that at all. And then we came up with the idea, like, let's just do a double version of it, a 9% version of it. That was Meme de la Creme. And that was super simple because we could just take that template, change the name, change colors, a couple things on it, and it's very visually recognizable. I mean, everybody knows what a meme kind of looks like anyways.
Yep.
Font's super fun and recognizable. And, it's worked out really well for us. And really it's just a matter of what sort of fruits we can get our hands on, or the gummy bear thing. That was just sort of a jump the shark, like, let's just try it and see what happens thing, because our big thing with the memes beers is always putting real fruit in them. We don't do purees or anything like that. We go and buy either real fruit or like real frozen fruit, in chunks and cubes, and then we'll, cook it, mash it up, sanitize it, make sure there's no weird bugs in it that are going to infect the beer. Put it in the beer post-fermentation, then you get a secondary re-fermentation on the fruit. And we just feel that throwing the skins and the stems and all that stuff, you just get a little bit of extra flavor out of it, rather than just dumping in, an extract and stuff. And those have their place in the brewing industry, and lots of people use them to great success. But that's sort of our thing with these, is we always want to try to promote, that we're using real fruit. And it takes a lot of extra time and effort, and gives us a chance to fire up that 20-gallon Blickman kettle that I was talking about earlier too. But yeah, I think the results we're really happy with. People seem really happy with it.
Oh yeah.
And yes, planning out, all right, when are we going to release this? How are we going to announce it? When are we going to announce it? Like trying to coordinate the packaging date to release date. Usually we release it either the day that we package it or the day after we package it. We don't let this stuff just sit around. I think people think we sit on it and then like, surprise, here's this beer that we want to do, but it's just based on how it's tasting as we're putting the fruit in. Real vanilla beans is another thing we put in there. We don't do any vanilla extracts or anything like that. Vanilla is like I think $330 or $340 a pound now.
Jeez.
So they're not cheap beers to make, but they're delicious.
When was the debut of the first meme beer? What do you know, like time-wise? Are we talking a year and a half ago? Are we talking 2 years ago?
I don't know. I could figure it out, but not off the top of my head.
Gotcha.
I'm bad with dates.
Same here.
I'm bad with dates. I know it's my wife's birthday this week. That's the one that I always have to really remember, and my mom's birthday.
My wife and I are both August 13th, so I have no problem with that. Yeah, I actually forgot my newborn daughter's birthday like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's been 8 weeks, so I'm with you on that.
I have that you'll go into CVS or something for prescriptions for one of your kids, and they're like, birth date, and you're like, and they always feel like, man, they're looking at me like, what a terrible parent this guy doesn't know his own kid's birthday. And I'm like, well, there's 4 of them. Like, come on, I'm having a hard time keeping track of these. So, yeah, dates are hard for me to keep track of.
How's 4 kids? Because I've got 1, and I'm like, that's intense.
3 is where it gets to the point where you're like, this is crazy. I don't know how anybody does this. And then you just push over that to the 4th. And then the one's old enough to start helping out with the younger ones. And it goes a lot better. The first one is always very, like you're a new parent. You're like, am I doing this right? Am I going to screw up this whole kid's future and stuff?
Yeah.
And you just kind of have to think back, like, people have been doing this for a really long time. Like, I'm sure this kid will be fine. And yeah, 2's stressful. 3's really stressful. I think 4 is where it starts getting easier. So just keep on going.
Keep on going. If it was up for my wife, I think we're trying to cap out at 3. I think that's where at least my cap is.
See, but then you have a middle kid. And then I don't know if anybody
That's
heard
true.
a middle kid.
But if I'm going to go 4, I'm going to go 5. I'm going to get a basketball team together.
There you go.
At least a starting 5.
Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, then like essentially, if you get to 9, then we're getting really crazy, right?
Yeah, then you're getting into Dutch Reformed people levels of reproduction. Yeah. You get fill the earth.
So getting back to the windmill stuff for a second here.
That took a really weird segue.
It did. That was a sidebar.
Yeah.
Josh, you're gonna have to maybe edit that out. No, I'm kidding. But so when it comes to like the legacy of Windmill, where do you see it kind of going, and where do you kind of want people to kind of know you guys as?
I think since the start, we've always just been kind of to promote different beers. Not just run of the mill. Like we really bucked that Citra APA trend. For the longest time, we didn't want to brew an IPA. People would walk in and look at our board and be like, no IPA, because they just expected that. And we have some little manifesto on our website about craft beer and IPA are not synonymous. So just different beers, real fruit, innovative, and we like to really promote the responsible drinking of craft beer too. Like, it's not just about drinking all these 9-10% ABV beers and getting as smashed as quickly as you can.
Well, it makes it for a really horrible next day.
Oh yeah, no.
The worst next day, it's about as good as like a hard alcohol next day.
Yeah, craft beer hangovers can be pretty bad. So trying to minimize those would be kind of key to enjoying it. Not just chugging them. So
sure.
Yeah.
Any breweries locally that you're really a big fan of?
Oh man, everybody around here is so nice. I mean, we have really good relationships with every brewery. I mean, I think it's a really rare industry that you're almost not even, people call them competitors, but they're really not. I mean, you're sort of rivals. It's basically us against the big guys kind of thing. So really you're not pitting yourself against these other breweries. And we've, anytime you're in a pinch, you can reach out. I got a list on my phone, probably 100 people long at this point of like, I got a question about packaging. I got a question about glycol. We're short on can lids, and vice versa. People call us. You guys got extra pack techs. We're running out today. Boom, we'll bring a case of pack techs over, and it always comes back with a case of beer. It's just cool stuff like that where like very rarely do you see that in other industries where everybody just views us all as like direct competitors. And really we're all trying to make better beer and trying to promote the idea of craft beer to everybody around here.
Yep.
And try to get people away from the big problem is like fake craft beer, where like these bigger breweries are buying up breweries and promoting them as craft. So that's why the Brewery Association came up with that independent certified stupid upside down bottle. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, disparaging remarks against the Brewers Association, but like you look for that when you either buy beer or look on the door of the tap room or something that certifies it's a independently owned, local business. It's not, some brewery that's standing themselves up that's really owned by Anheuser-Busch or something like that. So that's something that the industry is kind of standing up against, and everybody around here too has been really awesome.
Sure. Well, that's one of the things that really brought us to it, which I loved about it the most. When I was homebrewing, I don't know, 7 years ago, it was one of those things that was just amazing and how infectious that energy was. I mean, you would talk to this brewer, that brewer, this brewer, and it was all about tips, and it was all about helping each other.
Right.
And the market share for like the domestic beers was so great that it didn't, like, everyone needed to kind of chip in to kind of like make a dent in it.
Yeah.
And I think that mentality is really stuck. I think we were talking off air here a little bit about this area in particular and the different waves of breweries that have come around.
Yep.
And it'll be interesting because I think we were talking, there's that first wave of course, Three Floyds that made it kind of really popular, which I didn't know. Did you know Crown Brewing was the Three Floyds of this area 100 years ago?
I knew that it was a historic name and that they had kind of taken that over at some point. I didn't know that they were that big, though.
Huge, and it was in Crown Point. And they were just bottling a ton and just sending it out across the Midwest.
Wow.
And I don't know what the demise of that was by any chance, but maybe that's what we'll get on the
Prohibition then, maybe?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. So that's crazy to think about. And then, but we have the Three Floyds one. Then we have like that Crown Brewing, that Figure Eight, and then that third wave, which you said you're kind of a part of, right? Where you're just that. I'd say 18th Street was. I remember the first time I tried it was like this Crown Beer Fest, like 2013.
Okay.
Or 2014, and it was Deal with the Devil was like my first one with that one, which is I love that beer.
You were like, whoa, what is this?
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. It was like eye-opening. And then it really started out our craze with like, let's start brewing. Let's have fun with it. We just reached a point, which I think all home brewers reach, is like, is this a hobby or is this a profession?
Yeah.
Because the upgrades in price start to get kind of out of control.
Yeah.
A little bit,
And the other thing that they don't tell you in homebrewer to pro brewer transition school is running a brewery it's a business, and it's a highly regulated, it's a difficult business. You can't. There was a time when you could be a home brewer and make good beer and start a brewery and probably do okay, but with the saturation around here at this point, it's tough. I mean, the equipment is very expensive, the taxing and the reporting and all that stuff. You got to be on your game with that stuff, or the government will sweep in and shut you down.
Really? So there's a lot of auditing going on.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Like I think after our first year, we got randomly selected for an audit by the Indiana State Excise Department, where it's like they want to check your production records to your tax records and make sure everything matched up. And that was another cool thing where someone from the industry kind of pitched in, because we get yeast from Floyd's occasionally. And I just stopped in and talked to Rob, their business manager over there, and just said, like, I'm really stressing about this audit. Like, well, what do I have to worry about? And he's like, here's what they're going to look for. Have all this ready. And boom, boom, boom. He sent me a nice email. Here's all the reports they're going to want. Have all those printed in a folder ready for that guy. He'll be there for an hour or two. I mean, this is a guy that runs Floyd's. I mean, they ship beer all over the place.
Everywhere.
And he's telling me, this little guy, like, dude, don't worry about it. Like, and I did exactly what he said, and it worked out perfectly. Like, that was just such a cool example of how somebody in the industry with, way more experience than I could was just like, I got you. Here's how you do it, and helped us out. And it was very, very not stressful. It was awesome.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Where do you see the craft beer industry going? Do you see the next fad around the corner?
I'm kind of interested to see. I think everybody it's funny, like, there were like IPA holdouts for the longest time, then everybody jumped in on IPA. Now you got sort of the New England style thing, and like, you got your traditional guys are like, we're never going to brew one of those things, and now everybody's kind of jumping in. So it's just kind of where's the style going to go, where people's palate's going to go. For a while it was, how many hops can we slam in this bomber, call it a double, triple IPA, and people drink it and melt their teeth out. And now it's like, how much hop aroma and flavor can we get in without the bitterness? And it's, I think sours are still kind of an up and coming thing. We got, Sour Note, dedicated sour facility up the road. I'm kind of hoping to see a little bit more development in people's palates around more traditional sours. It's Lacto, PDO, Brettanomyces, kind of long aged sours.
Oh wow!
Which are very hard and expensive to make, and don't always turn out. But
can you talk about the toll that making a sour takes on your equipment?
It's kind of depends on the brewery. A lot of places will do some places go as crazy as Upland has separate buildings that they do everything in. We don't. We do mostly kettle sours, so I'm not saying that we're big on that. We have a couple wilds going right now that we did wild caught yeast from the air that's fermenting. And then our fruited sours are just kettle sours. So you're just pitching lactobacillus in there and then letting it sour, then boiling it to just kill all that off, and then fermenting it like a normal beer.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of as much as you want to give it. If you're a sour facility, then you can pitch all kinds of cool wild bacteria, ferment it in these, foeders and oak barrels and stuff like that. Transient up in Bridgman is doing amazing stuff with that kind of thing up there. There's a lot of places around here that are starting that, but it's a long process. It's not, a 2.5-3 week IPA that you're cranking out with a brewer's yeast. You're using, these bacteria that they'll ferment the beer, they'll sour it. They're not super good at it, and they take a long time, but the results are amazing. So that's something I want to see us get into a little more.
Cool.
But
Wow.
It's just, time consuming, and again, more equipment, more capital.
Oh yeah. Well, that sounds like you're right around the corner of that. And we kind of touched on it in the beginning, but I'd like to kind of touch on it one more time. The 3-year anniversary. What does that look like?
So we're hosting it off-site, so we can have guest drafts this time. We're inviting a bunch of the food trucks from the Northwest Indiana Food Truck Association. We've been super good friends with them. Juan from Sizzlebox, if you've ever had Sizzlebox.
Oh, it's great.
Food truck.
Great guy, too.
He was one of our, when we opened, we've never had food. We still don't to this day. That's somewhere else I'd like to go. But he was our original food truck. We had a friend who showed up for a while and smoked pork shoulders and stuff in the back. And then Juan kind of came in and started doing cheeseburgers. And he's got his, that Chicago-style deep dish grilled cheese that he makes and stuff. And he was a Windmill staple for quite a while. And then he got snatched up by, I think there was the Griffith Summer Farmers Market or something like that on the days that we always wanted him. So we'd lost him over there. But, just getting to work with those guys. They've banded together as a really neat little food truck association. And they'll do festivals and stuff. So we thought, what better event to highlight Northwest Indiana food trucks than our anniversary party. So there's going to be a bunch of them there. Guest taps, finally, something people ask us for all the time. So pretty much any brewery that we've done a collab or business with or something like that with Northwest Indiana, with a few exceptions, is going to be there. Not Devil's Trumpet, not because, but mostly because I forgot to ask them. And 18th Street, Wild Rose, New Oberpfalz. It's going to be awesome.
I can't wait for it. I know it's one of the events we were looking out for this summer. And the other one I'm really looking forward to is I think it's the weekend right before Labor Day is the Burnham. They have another event that's going to be really cool.
Those guys put on a ton of events. I mean, this one event for us is we're stressing out about it. I mean, it's a lot bigger scale than what we're used to, but those guys just crank out event after event. They have anniversary party. They do the 420-ish party, and just all kinds of stuff. Those guys are so much fun. They're going to be at the anniversary party too.
Cool. We had that party last Thursday, and that was a ton of stress. And it was only 75 to 100 people. I couldn't imagine doing it on that large of a scale.
Yeah,
the coordination's crazy,
and it really makes you appreciate. You look at what Dark Lord Day is every year. And I know I think they use an event planning company at this point, because it's just dealing with that many people and that much. You got this year they went cashless because it used to be you pay for some of your stuff with cash, and then you got oh crud, what do I do with all this money that's sitting around? They would have runners with vests and stuff, and I mean, it's just insane when you get that many people in a spot. And this is just little old us in a park with 5 guest breweries and some food trucks, and it's we're talking about we had to apply for a liquor permit, we had to get porta potties, we had to get fencing, we had to get approval from the town. We're having 2 off-duty police officers for security. We're having the Dyer FOP is going to be there selling water bottles. It's sort of a little fundraiser for them. We got merch tent, just scheduling the people for that. I mean, it's a lot of planning that goes into something like that. People show up sometimes and they're why do I got to pay $10 to get in here? And you just kind of turn around and look at everything behind it, and you're yeah, you're right. That is kind of a lot of money. Sorry. But I think it'll go really well, and hopefully the weather holds. That's the only thing we have absolutely no control over is the weather at this point. So August generally a little on the warmer side, not super wet sometimes. So see how it goes.
Well, it's been starting to cool down. We do weather now. I don't know if you've seen that.
The region weather thing?
The region weather
Yes.
stuff, yes. So we do that, and we just learned that last week that we're every day going into this is like we're losing like almost 20 minutes of every week. We're losing about 15 minutes of sunlight.
Oh, man.
So it's going quick, and so it'll probably be a little cooler around that time, which will be great, and hopefully the rain will hold off, and it'll be a great event.
Perfect.
Yeah, that sounds beautiful. Sounds like San Diego.
Yeah, that's San Diego. I've been there recently, and I can see why people want to live there. But then you look at home prices, and then all of a sudden you're like, all right, I'll put up with the winters in Northwest Indiana.
You mentioned Juan from Sizzlebox, and this is a funny story. We were at the Off Square 1-year anniversary, and we usually go into the food trucks to kind of grab some footage. And when we were in there was a guy who must have been waiting. Because you know how food trucks are, man. It's a limited supply. They've got to literally make the orders fresh. So
Right.
that just holds up time. That's just the way it is. And so we were in there, and this guy is screaming at me as if I'm like the owner of the food truck. And he's yelling at me about, okay, you're in there taking pictures and you're running cameras. How about you shut the fuck up and make some actual food for me? This is like this whole thing. And like me and the Sizzlebox employees, I've never met these guys before. We're all sitting there just like, what the hell is going on here? Guy ends up just like, give me my money back. I'm out of here. And then turns around and just writes him a shitty Yelp review about the whole thing.
Oh, don't get me started on Yelp.
Unbelievable that someone can just write that stuff. It's crazy. And so it was like I saw Juan because he was not there for that day. And then I saw Juan at the Pints in the Park event, and I was in the truck, and he's like, "Were you here for that?" Because now it's become like a real thing, you know. But the food truck scene is so fascinating to me.
There's something about buying food out of the side of a truck. I
That's
don't know
amazing.
what's so cool about it, but I mean, like you can see the kitchen. The people are always really friendly. The food is always really innovative, and that's why I think for our anniversary party, I think it's going to be really cool.
How many do you have coming?
I don't know at this point. The number keeps changing because some people drop out, some people add. I think it's like 7. I want to say, and they're not all like food trucks. Like we got one that's like bubble tea, one that's cupcakes and desserts. So you're gonna be able to show up and not just get like 8 iterations of cheeseburgers and hot dogs or stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of different things.
I can't wait for that. Is it that same Food Truck Alliance, that whole group?
Yeah, Northwest Indiana Food Truck Alliance.
Cool.
Yep.
Well, looking forward to it. Is there anything you'd like to kind of leave our listeners with?
No, just please come to the anniversary party.
Please
You got to
come.
pay for the porta potties. There's a lot of them. Hopefully there won't be lines.
Awesome. Well, Justin, thank you for coming in for the first episode ever.
Thanks for having me.
That's fantastic. And then go to the anniversary party. Check that out. Where can they find you?
On Facebook, just look up Windmill Brewing, and there's a link on the event page there for our anniversary party to buy the tickets, and all the other info's on there as well.
Awesome. Does Luther have his own pages?
Luther does not. We've debated it because there were people that were starting to get a little upset when we were doing like cat pictures all the time, and they're like, hey, how about post some pictures of beer? So he does not have his own page yet, but I should do that.
Yeah, it'd be a good cross-reference.
Yeah, maybe get him a Snapchat account or something too.
That'd be cool. Well, thank you for coming in. I know it was a little bit of a drive from Dyer, so I really appreciate that.
Not too far.
And next week we have Chris from Devil's Trumpet, so we can have that conversation.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Cheers.